going down.
That's right.
Hey everybody, welcome back to A Drink with Monty. You are with the Monties, as well as our good friend Josh. We hope that you enjoyed the podcast with Blake Stinnett. We really enjoyed having him here and having him contribute. He's got a lot of good stuff going on. John and I have already signed up for automatic payments to be drafted from our account and to go to Next Rung monthly. It's a wonderful cause. If y'all can afford $3 a month, we highly suggest you do it.
Yeah, it's $3 a month. Kind of sound like you said 30.
I said $3.
Yeah, I'm saying it's 3, but it sound like you said 30. But
well, I mean, you could do 30.
Yeah, no, you can donate whatever you want. But something cool and kind of put into perspective was, if you just take their Instagram followers, it's over 13,000 people. If everybody donated $1 a month, he said, man, think of what we could give back.
Yeah.
So, we did we're big ballers and decided to do the $3.
Yeah. John's got to cut me off of one Starbucks per month.
Yeah.
It was took a lot of convincing, but that's okay. All right. Without further ado, we are here with our good friend. John, you want to bring us in?
Yeah, so we're here tonight with my good friend Josh Collett. Before we jump too far into it, we'll talk about what we're drinking. And tonight I am indulging in a delicious Goose Island 312. This is actually one of the first ones I've had, and it's not too bad. The first taste kind of tasted like iron.
Iron?
Like your blood. Iron.
Oh, that's nasty.
But that taste is gone now, so it's all good. What are you sipping on, Joshua?
Sipping on some Woodford Reserve.
Too classy.
I know.
Oh, he got really classy. He even got John to bring out the classy beer. That's kind of crazy. I'm drinking a glass of black box red wine because it is still quarantine. And I don't know many females that quarantine without boxed wine. And if I don't want to know them if they do.
They're nothing like you, babe.
Thanks.
Bougie.
Bougie is correct. So, Josh, you are probably my best friend, and we really haven't even known each other too long, but I would say that the first time you and I met, literally, it was love at first sight.
Pretty much.
We bonded pretty quick, and it's kind of been downhill ever since. You're kind of one of those guys that you either love to death or you just don't like,
I've heard that before.
Yeah. No, I'm kind of the same way. Real quick, Josh is a Marine veteran, and I'll let him tell you more about that. So, Josh, just tell us a little bit about yourself, man.
So I grew up in Kennesaw, went to Harrison High School, graduated, and went straight into the Marine Corps. Served 4 years. I was a machine gunner with 3rd Battalion, 5th Marines.
Goons up.
Yep, goons up. I got out of the Marine Corps, started working with my dad, and then moved on, started my own company, the Belt Fed Craftsman, doing renovations, woodwork, a little bit of everything. But yeah, I mean, not a whole bunch to me.
Well, no, that's kind of what's awesome because you're one of the few people I know that, number one, you learn things super fast, but you're kind of a jack of all trades, and all those trades you tend to be good at. It's usually the other way around. People are, a jack of all trades and master it. Very few. You know what I mean? So I feel like the things that you partake in, you're pretty good at. But the stuff we're going to talk about tonight, you and I have talked a lot about. We're the kind of friends that sit in the dark and talk about really philosophical and deep things.
Yeah.
That sounded kind of creepy.
No, I mean, it's just is what it is. I mean,
no, I'm kidding. So, I mean, as you guys know, it's still the month of May, and John and I have decided to do all of these podcasts based around mental health for Mental Health Awareness Month. So, I mean, obviously, Josh has a lot to tell. He's got a great story. We thought about this before, and we talked about centering this around his military into civilian life, or I guess civilian into military into civilian life, and the mental aspect around that. Like John said, they talk about this often, so it'll be cool to get everybody else in on it.
Yeah, dude. So you and I have talked a lot about this stuff, but what drew you to the military?
That's a good question. I think a lot of it came from my grandfather. My grandfather was a Marine, and I always looked up to him. Always heard him saying the Marines are the best. So
wanted to be the best.
Yeah, had to go out and be the best. But no, I always felt a call to service. I'm sure you and many people in your realm feel the same.
So just called to serve, man.
Yeah.
And that's kind of like what you hear from a lot of the guys that do what you do. So would you say that going into the military, just kind of real quick, would you say that your mentality just on life in general has changed before and after? Like when you went in, you looked at life one way, and then you came out and now you see it this way. And if there was a change, what was that change?
I think the biggest thing for me was maturity. I think that going in, everybody has sort of a grandiose idea of what the military actually is, and it is skewed mostly by movies and videos and video games and what have you. But I would probably say the maturity piece of
Does that
military.
maturity piece hit everybody, you think?
In my experience, no.
Okay, yeah. All right.
Yeah, so I think the funniest thing for me, we would always say you could tell the dudes that played a lot of video games before they got in. They just didn't necessarily have the right idea of what the military was going to be. And no matter how you cut it, the majority of your time in the military is going to be spent training. Anybody that tells you any different is probably lying to you. But
so we were saying the two polar opposites of veterans. It's you get the people who are super scored away, come out and utilize what they've learned in the military, like for leadership and just entrepreneurship, and like you set your mind to it and you achieve it. Then you have the other pole, and it's just the people that I feel bad for saying that.
It's like, to me, what I saw, if you were an asshole before you went in, you're going to come out an asshole. It's very few and far in between where you have people that drastically change their characteristics. They might change the way they were living prior to the military, but in my experience, I think a lot of guys go in and slowly over time they start to evolve to be like the leaders that they look up to. I think a lot of individuals are able to kind of, especially at such a young age, there's not many places that you get thrown into a realm where you get to follow the lead of somebody that's been around the block and has done extravagant things in such a short period of time. But you begin to understand kind of the leadership aspect and begin to generalize how you want to be as a person and how you want to be as a leader.
So like, were most of the people in your boot camp like your age, fresh and young?
So yeah, majority of the people, I would say my boot camp class was 88 people, and I would say the vast majority of that was between the ages of 17 to 20.
So you know what drives like kind of is crazy to think about with that? Like, you think about like college campuses and stuff and how kids are like finding their way and like finally away from mom and dad and like becoming and, you know, making mistakes and acting like idiots and going to school. But then it's kind of like put that atmosphere with like high stakes military.
You learn very quickly. The Marine Corps has one way, and that's the way they want you to do it. And if you don't do it, then
I just think thinking about it from that perspective, like it's a bunch of like kids fresh out of high school, college, going, some have been away from their family for the first time. You moved straight out of your parents' house into the Marine Corps. That's just crazy to think about.
I would say that you don't really start to become a Marine after boot camp, but for me, I didn't really start feeling it until I was with my unit and I was with the people that were in charge of me. And then they started to kind of morph who they wanted me to be as far as what my role was. But I think a lot of people, it's so dependent on the situation.
Yeah, no.
My military experience is so minute, and there are people that experience 10x what I did, and my experience is so narrow, and I went from boot camp to infantry school, straight to my unit, straight to deployments. So there wasn't really a lot of room for me to analyze a whole bunch of the military.
I feel like everything is so fast and so planned. It's like your job is not to analyze. It's just to do.
It is. It's just to go where you're told.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But dude, my realm of experience with military is watching freaking Discovery Channel and documentaries. You know what I mean? So I don't know what it's like, but to me, the perception is Marines are just the baddest dudes around.
There's definitely bad dudes everywhere.
Yeah, but dude, I understand you're trying to be modest, but you can't sit here and tell me like, the Marines of the branches are like the hardest dudes.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Machine gunners.
Yeah,
my 31s. Where y'all at?
So
guns up.
Let's dive into it, dude. And this is something that you and I have talked a lot about, is the mental health side of things. We can go as deep as you want to.
Mm-hmm.
I know recently you've had a couple friends.
Let's dive in, man.
Yeah, dude, and
I'm
that's
open for it.
Good. I'm glad, because I want people to hear the stories.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think the first time you and I ever talked deep about something like this was New Year's.
Yeah.
2 years ago.
Yep.
We were in the mountains together, and we were sitting outside of a cabin, and your buddy had just taken his life.
Mm-hmm.
And man, you and I sat outside and talked for probably 3 or 4 hours.
Yeah.
So I don't know the statistic. I would look it up, but my wife has taken my phone. What is the rate of veteran suicide? What was 2018? Give me 2019. Will they have the statistics for 2019?
I'm not sure.
And another thing to think about, I know with the fire service, I shouldn't say a lot, there is a number of suicides that aren't reported. So in the fire service, the number of suicides we get at the end of the report, or whenever they do the final numbers, isn't even accurate, because that's just what's reported.
So in 2019, the VA released its National Veteran Suicide Prevention Annual Report, stating the suicide rate for veterans was 1.5 times the rate of non-veteran adults. The report established that there were 6,000 more veteran suicides per year from 2008 to 2017.
I read something or heard something the other day that was like a veteran commits suicide every 20 minutes.
Yeah.
And that's just crazy to me, dude. And I don't want to talk about like the VA or anything. I don't,
Mm-hmm.
That's what I want to talk about, man. Like
the people.
Yeah, dude.
People.
I'll let you talk about your buddy. I would venture to say that was the first close friend of yours that committed suicide from the military.
No. So, yeah, I got out of the Marine Corps in 2018, and almost immediately had heard about a guy that I was very good friends with that attempted suicide, and luckily he survived. And that kind of shook me a little bit. And prior to that, as much as I hate to say this, I'd always been that guy that was like, man, if they're committing suicide, they just don't have what it takes. And that was such a juvenile and childish way of thinking that I had no idea about until I had experienced it. And I think probably 2 or 3 months went by, and it happened again. Another friend had called me and was like, hey man, so-and-so, they tried to kill themselves. They're all right, but this is the situation. And I was like, man, this is crazy. This actually happens. Like I'd heard about it, but I'd never experienced it. A few months later, we had this guy that was working for us through our nonprofit, Second Street Ministries, and this guy was probably one of the hardest working individuals I've ever met. me and him had many run-ins where we disagreed on things, but at the end of the day, I love the dude to death. He had just been failed from the beginning. At a young age, he was abused by his father. He ended up moving in with his grandfather, and his grandfather was abusing his mom, and he got in an altercation with his grandfather, ended up going to a correctional facility when he was 13 years old, never learned how to fully read or write. So, I mean, he was a grown man that just knew how to read a tape measure. And he had been doing good, had some issues with his wife at the time, and just from there started kind of spiraling. And one of the last days I remember seeing him, my dad had came on the job site, and you could just tell something was wrong with him, because he was always that peppy guy, always hopped up, just jumping around, singing, dancing, making a fool of himself. And I mean, this guy was curled up in a ball crying and was like, I can't do it anymore. So we got him some help, and we thought everything was good. And right before we left for the mountain trip, I remember standing in the driveway of the house we were working on at that time, and I asked him if he needed anything, and I asked him what his plans were for the holidays. He said, nothing, man, just hanging out. And he actually coincidentally started telling me about stuff we needed to do on the project when we got back to work the following week. And then we go up to the cabin. 2 days later, I get the call that he had taken his life. And I think that's really when the realm of mental health kind of hit me. And I started to understand that it isn't just something that these people dwell on. It's not something that these people are just too weak to make it through life. It's a serious issue that there's a lot of unanswered questions, and there's a lot of people that are hurt by it that don't have the answers to it.
Yeah, I don't. It's a question that you and I both tossed back and forth, and in my experience, it seems like people who go through a situation like this where they're directly affiliated or connected to the person that commits suicide is the question I asked myself was, what did they know, or what did they see, or what did they feel that I didn't? Like, what am I one hiccup away from being in the same spot they were?
I vividly remember sitting by the fire pit looking at you and saying, what's stopping me from waking up one day and saying, this is the end. I don't want to be here anymore.
And dude, that's terrifying.
And for everybody listening, I've never felt that. But it is a very real question that something triggered these people to get to that point.
And like you said, you asked him what he needed, and like you said, he was talking about the things you guys needed to do when y'all got back to work. And that's another thing in the fire service. When I was newer, I still consider myself new, but when I was brand new, I always wanted to know, like, why did they do this? And I guess I don't know why. I don't know why I wanted to know that, but now, honestly, I ask that question because I want to tell myself that I'm not there.
Right, like something you always spoke about when you were going through, we've talked about how you had to go to counseling and you were going through some anxiety and stuff. It wasn't that you were there mentally. It's not that you were afraid you were going to take your life one day. It was that you didn't understand their thought process that got them there.
Exactly. Yeah. You said it way better than I did.
And you were wondering, you said, like, how do I know my thought process isn't going the same way that theirs was going? And I mean, that's a valid question. Like when you're experiencing anxiety or depression or some kind of, mental instability in the least, at what point is it dangerous for yourself? I mean, did they even know it was dangerous for them, or until it was too late? That's a valid concern.
Yeah. Jeff Orange said it best, and again, I'm horrible at quoting people, but I believe the way he put it, and Jeff Orange is with the Florida Coalition of Mental Health. He's doing a lot of really good things down there. He said, I am 5 steps away from doing the same thing. You know, he had a lot of misfortune and a lot of people that took their own lives in his family. And he asked himself the same question a lot. You know, what is stopping me? What is my breaking point, you know? Mm-hmm. And then, I mean, yeah, you know, we're all just 5 steps away from,
absolutely,
from doing something terrible.
I fully believe that.
And I had the mentality before I really kind of got into that headspace that, like you're just weak. Mm-hmm. You're weak. You're a coward.
Mm-hmm. Or they didn't have anything to live for. They didn't have family that loved them, or, you know, like, they were in such a horrible place that they really felt alone. Like, I mean, obviously they did feel alone if they did something like that, but I hear of circumstances where they have a great family and their family seemed to love them, and you know, you wonder, like, how did they get there?
Yeah, and I would ask these family members, or you know, the people that were there, like, you know, was there any indication this was going to happen? Was this person depressed? Was he going through something? Did he lose? No. And the worst ones were the family or friends would look at you and say,
nothing.
There was nothing that tipped this off. Yeah. We had no idea.
From what I've seen and what I've experienced, in every case except for one, there was some sort of catalyst that threw it off. But the big thing was the catalyst was coupled with either drugs or alcohol. Mm-hmm. For the guys in the military, the alcohol was a big one. And in our culture, I mean, the Marine Corps was born in a bar, Ton Tavern, and it's just part of the tradition, part of the culture. And in a way, it's almost encouraged. But in each of those situations, that was, I would say, from outside looking in, it seemed like that was a big part of what really led to the decision.
You know, something that has always been that has always stood out in my head, especially with like the Marine Corps. Like, you have to be mentally strong just to get through to be a Marine, just to get through the boot camp and to get through all, I mean, hazing, for lack of a better word. I don't know. I'm not very educated on.
Can't say that.
No.
No, not hazing. Not hazing. Backtrack.
Hazing with some training involved.
But to get through all of that rigorous training, and it's a mind game. A lot of the training is them training your mind on how to react in situations. It's crazy to me that someone who has to be so mentally strong in situations like that can fall into such a deep trap. And even with the fire service, even with first responders, like, you have to be in any situation like that, you have to have some kind of mental capacity and be able to get out of your head in order to do your job. But it's almost like those same people, it's like when they come out of that job is when, and I'm just talking at this point, when they come out of that job is when, like, they can't handle it mentally. I don't know.
For me, when you said all that made me think of one thing, and I can't remember who said it, but for some reason it's always stuck with me, and it's been something that I've very much felt. When you're in the military, when you're in the fire department, when you're in really any servant job, you're always under a microscope. And then when you separate from that, you go from being under a microscope to being unseen. And it is very much a gut check. Yeah. And you have to hold yourself accountable for all of your actions. You always do. But I think a lot of people go from continuously being just nitpicked about the smallest things. Hey, your boots look like crap. Hey, your camis look like crap. But they can't tell that you're one step away from throwing yourself off a cliff. And I think that really irritates a lot of people, because our job inherently is very detail oriented, but we always miss that one little piece, or we don't want to see it. And I think both kind of coincide with each other in a way. But yeah.
Have you heard of the saying, "Your cup's overflowing"?
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like in any kind of, like you said, in-servant job, they put so much effort into checking every piece of our health history, and they don't do a damn thing for mental health. I don't know what the protocol is for the military, but for the fire service, they talk about it. You know, they say, hey, if you're having problems, talk to somebody. And they give you a card with a number on it. And you call this number, and it's someone in frickin' West Virginia that has no idea what it's like to be a firefighter, has never done anything fire service or paramedic or EMT related. And that's what we liked about Blake so much.
Yeah, Blake touched on that a lot.
So
he put the responsibility on you guys and on the peers. Like, go up to, if you ran a bad call with someone, go up to them like, hey, seriously, are you all right? Like, he said that, like, you have to not hold each other accountable, but like check in on each other hardcore, because no one else is necessarily doing it for you.
No.
So I'll ask you two questions. The first one would be, three questions actually. What is the protocol for somebody in crisis in the military? Question one. Second question is there a stigma in the military that you're weak if you talk about being mentally unstable? And I forgot my third question.
I knew you were going to do that.
I'm sorry.
A lot.
We can address the first two. So
so the stigma, what was the first question? Stigma behind...
No. Okay. So what's the protocol?
Okay.
Is there a protocol for someone who is suffering
in crisis
mentally?
So yes, there is. And usually it is piss poor. In my experience, like I've said, everybody else's military experience is going to differ either slightly or drastically from mine. No experience is the same. As far as what I experienced, if somebody was showing signs of suicidal ideology, they'd be placed on suicide watch, meaning somebody was coming into their room, taking their knives, anything they could potentially harm themselves with. And
so everyone would know.
Everyone would know. And they were treated as a nuisance almost immediately. And that's more on the... what's the word I'm looking for? That would be informal, I think, is the word I'm looking for. That would be the more informal way of that occurring. Now, if somebody sought out or said that, hey, I've got some stuff going on, I'm not doing too well right now, I need to go speak to chaps, or I need to go to the doctor, it would be handled a lot different. But if somebody started to show signs, they would immediately be grabbed up and be placed on suicide watch. And it wasn't necessarily constructive.
I mean, bottom line is it wouldn't be an easy thing to go through. It wouldn't be kept, quiet. It wouldn't be, and I mean, on the flip side, like, that would be kind of hard to do. You guys are working with guns every day, I understand the need to automatically remove someone from a situation like that. But what you're saying is it would take a lot for someone to get the guts to go and do that.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think from, again,
without feeling lashed back.
Yeah. Yeah. I think most people in the back of their head, even if they did have severe suicidal ideology, they probably would just not in any realm approach it through the military.
In fear of retribution.
What
Because
about like, and I mean, I know every experience is different, but like you guys, I mean, we've talked about like the fire department, they live together a third of their lives, they become so close. You guys literally live together. You guys become super close. So do you think there are a lot of relationships that they could lean back on and have like a friend in their group or whatever?
Absolutely. I
Yeah.
talked to a large majority of the people I served with almost daily. And I think getting out, that is one of the most important things for me. And as time has passed after getting out, I've realized the importance of that. But when I first moved home, I wasn't doing that. I mean, I've talked to 2 or 3 guys.
So I think like a big thing is peer support. It sounds like a lot of people lean on that, and that is going to be probably the biggest impact that either like with any first responders or military or anything. It sounds like peer support is like the first line of defense when it comes to someone in the field or on the job feeling, bad thoughts.
So coincidentally, I did not realize the importance of continuing to reach out and, for lack of better terms, just keep our community going with the guys we served with until I went to one of the 575 things. And that was probably a year and a half after I'd been home. And I was like, this is the first time since I've been home that like I felt surrounded by a bunch of guys that believe the same thing that I believe, that we're here to serve. And I think after that, it in a way ignited a spark under me that kind of led me to start reaching out to more guys, reaching out to just guys that would pop up on my Facebook or something, reach out to them. Hey man, how you doing? What you up to? Like, you need anything? But I think a lot of people get out and they seclude themselves and they go back to what they were doing before they got in the military, and they're hanging out with the same people who, for lack of better terms, those people haven't necessarily grown any, and the individual that's leaving the military has grown drastically in those 4 years or X amount of time they've served. And I think that's where some of the loneliness and the depression, and coupled with alcohol, I think that's kind of where this spiral begins, and it's downhill from there.
Well, like you said, you're leaving such a structured life, man. Like, from the time you get up until the time you go to bed, and even while you're sleeping, it is laid out black and white. Here's what you do.
Yep.
And for me, when I was going through all my stuff, man, idle time was the absolute worst. Being alone and quiet terrified me.
Mm-hmm.
And so I can only imagine going from a career where every minute of every day is planned for you. You're always with people. You're working as a team. You have brothers and sisters with you all the time, to, like you said, going home and sitting in your house alone. And that silence is enough to make anybody mad.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? I think that you're hitting the nail on the head by reaching out to people and being the outlet for people, because, like we said in our podcast, the second I talked, not to a professional, not to a brother or sister in the fire service, the second I spoke to my wife, I felt 1,000 times better. So to talk,
same with you. I mean, same with me and you.
Yeah, no, yeah, absolutely, man.
I remember when y'all first, like, y'all kind of hit it off as friends, like, right away.
After the lunchbox situation, you were pretty pissed about that.
What was the lunchbox situation?
I broke Jeremy Lemon's lunchbox.
And John got mad about it?
Yeah, me and him kept talking about it. It's okay.
So, backstory, Mary is Josh's significant other. She has been great friends with us for years. So she introduced Josh to the group. And, you know, when Josh got home from the military, that's when we got introduced to him, and he and John started their bromance at that time. But back to what I was saying, I remember you guys talking when you first met, and y'all were talking about, like, you know, why did y'all hit it off so well? And what, you know, it was just kind of like you met an old friend and y'all just kind of took off from there. And you said you kind of had similar experiences where you didn't feel like everyone got you, that like conversations or like light conversations just kind of didn't do it for you. Like you go to a house party and have a light conversation or whatever. And it was just like, you felt like people didn't understand where you were, and you felt like you were living in their situation. I'm butchering it, but I remember like you guys talking about how you felt like kindred spirits in that you had similar experiences or similar beliefs based on your careers, and it made you bond more.
Yeah, no, that you didn't butcher it at all. You're exactly right.
Birds of a feather.
Yeah. We sat outside and
Smoked some cigars.
we smoked cigars.
I think probably one of the first conversation we ever had was probably one of the deepest conversations I've ever had in my life.
Yeah, it went from casual BS to into the down and dirty.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I don't want to admit it, but I forgot about that.
Mm-hmm.
That's wild. But dude, to move into that, it's so important to have someone like that.
Yeah, and okay, so I guess that's where I was going, is like a lot of people don't have that. Mm-hmm. Or they go home and, like you said, they hang out with the same people. They're, you know, back in the crowd they were in, and they probably, I'm speculating, they probably feel alone. Like no one has gone through or seen or, you know, grown up the way they have in such a short amount of time. Like they don't have anything in common with the people that they had everything in common with.
So coming home, and we're talking a lot about going from structure to zero structure. What was the... Let's back up. So you were in a situation where you and Mary had kind of rekindled things while you were in the States.
Mm-hmm.
And lo and behold, she got pregnant.
The Marine Corps ball will do that to you.
Yeah.
Semper Fi.
And so you were living in San Diego, right? When you wrapped up your service.
Mm-hmm.
So she was here in Atlanta with us, and you were in San Diego. So I think that's a story in itself, and how you coped with, you know, doing all that. You went from the beautiful man with beautiful hair and beard, single, living in San Diego.
I had no beard. I had no hair.
You're right, you didn't.
I had a clean fade, though.
You look good, bro. You looked really good back then. You look good now.
I look like shit now.
You looked really good back then. You've aged.
Yeah.
Having kids will do it, though.
Yeah.
So you and Mary found out you were having a child while you were still in San Diego, and you did, what, 4 months? Away?
Yep, 4.
Damn.
You're good.
I can't remember our anniversary, but I can remember that, by God. I got you, boy.
You don't know our anniversary?
December 5th. Shut up. Trying to catch me up. So, dude, tell us that alone will drive somebody insane.
That that time for me personally didn't really bother me. It bothered me in the fact that Mary was home and I was 3,000 miles away. But at that point, that our relationship had been majority long distance. So, I mean, it wasn't anything we weren't prepared for. But the time period of throwing a kid into the mix of transitioning was definitely interesting. But what can you do? You can just roll with the punches.
Yeah, absolutely, dude. Going through, you didn't, but imagine the servicemen and women who transition from military to civilian life and instantly have a kid. Dude, I think it could.
He didn't. He did. He came home to a pregnant.
Yeah, you're right. So it can go one of two ways. Either it can fill that void of idle mind, and because you're having a kid, you don't have an idle mind when you have kids.
If anything, for me, I think that was the best thing for me. I knew I had no other option other than I've got to figure this out because I'm not going to lay down and not provide for my family.
Right.
But I think having a kid definitely ignited the next stage of life for me. And that's something I think that a lot of people getting out of the military do. They want to hang their hat on all the great things they did in the military, and that's phenomenal. But in a normal enlistment, if you serve 4 years, that's 4 years of your life. That's nothing. And a lot of times I hear, and I love this quote, the most detrimental thing to the veteran community is veterans itself. I hear a lot of people, lost my train of thought again. God dang.
It's all right.
Keep hearing Warner. They want to hang their hat on their service. Their 4 years of service is great, and they want to define themselves off of what they did in the military, but that might only be 4 years, 8 years, whatever you served. And I think people get out and they almost get offended when they go into the business realm and they're not being treated like a first sergeant or like a staff sergeant. And they've had to relearn a whole job, and then they're at the low end of the totem pole again. And you go from being a hot shot in your unit that everybody was high-fiving and shooting the shit with to you're now the guy that knows nothing at your job. And then you lose the accountability piece of having all your friends around you. You're, like I said before, no longer under a microscope. You're unseen. And I think that's where the problems really start to breed. And it becomes a loop of trying to figure out, am I wrong? What am I doing? Because majority of people that I know that served and have had issues are more of a type A personality. Why can I not get this right? What their expectation of what the civilian world is not backwards, but it's not real. It's not,
because in reality they haven't experienced civilian life as an adult yet.
No, not at all.
Not outside the military.
In my case, I didn't.
Yeah.
I had zero experience.
And you said like the majority of the group you were with hadn't either.
Yeah. And it's dependent on, like I said, if you've served 20 years and you got in when you're 18, you're in your mid 40s and you have zero real world experience.
So you said you're good with talking about your experience with friends and suicide and stuff. So your buddy from work killed himself.
Yep.
And if I'm not mistaken, just recently you had another.
Found out a friend of mine had some issues, some personal issues. And this guy had never really drank. He wasn't a big drinker. Had some issues, some family issues, our second deployment. And we got back. He started drinking, which was totally outside of the norm for him. And his drinking progressed and progressed and progressed. And finally, he attempted to take his life, did not succeed, and is now in a lot worse shape than he was before. And I think that's when I don't know where I'm going with it, but we've got to figure out something. There's got to be something that me personally and the guys that I know can do to at least protect those around us. Start off with a small bubble. That bubble eventually grows. And I don't know what it is, but I think the biggest thing is just talking.
Dude, absolutely. And I'm glad you said that. And I'm glad you reference, the Fools and 575, man. So often I get overwhelmed with it. Mm-hmm. And I mean, it's turned into a second job, is running that thing. And I wouldn't have it any other way. But that has truly become an outlet.
Oh, absolutely.
It has. It puts me around people, puts me around like-minded people, and we just talk. There is zero judgment. Mm-hmm. There is no rank. There is none of that bullshit. It's literally just people, like-minded people together. Mm-hmm. And I think what you're doing, just reaching out to, like you said, a small group. Well, that small group, the people in that small group know a couple other people. And those couple people know a couple other people. And so I think that if you could just, and it sounds like you are, could put a group thread, a group me, a Zoom call, whatever, put something like that together, it's not going to cure anything. But damn, it really probably could give somebody that outlet they need.
Absolutely.
Somebody could be sitting on their couch and the group me dings. And it's a fucking meme of a giant penis or something. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
I say that, but that's serious.
Something that makes you laugh.
You
something
know?
that breaks the anomaly. I mean,
You laugh. You can be in the darkest moment. You can be in the shittiest situation and a chuckle.
Just knowing that somebody is there and somebody else is embracing the suck. That is probably one of my favorite quotes that I have ever heard.
To know you're not alone.
To know you're not alone.
I think another big aspect of it is just awareness and talking about it and making it normal. Like, I think people get so in their heads about how they're going to be the weirdo, they're going to be looked at, they're going to be patronized. Is that the word? Mm-hmm. And just for them to know that other people have gone through it, other people are going through it, that it's the norm. And if they say something about what they're feeling, that, they're not going to be looked at like crazies. I think that alone, just talking about, like you guys said, talking about it in your own groups, but just talking like we're doing on a public platform and making it normal and making it okay and letting people know that all of these people who have their perceived shit together probably haven't at some point in life. I think that's extremely important as far as, correcting some of the issues that, the world has with it right now. Not just, the worlds that you guys live in, but just society in general. Like, it's a problem everywhere, not just in y'all's
The issue
world.
Stems from the same root. I mean, it for everyone, it comes from the same place.
Right.
It has to. There's no way around that. It just depends on what the catalyst is.
What's your trigger?
Absolutely.
Something that, honestly, I kind of had an epiphany at the mental health class the Fools did. Gottfried.
Mm-hmm.
He was giving his lecture and he referenced the cup. Everybody's got a cup. And I emphasize everybody has a cup. And when I really started going through this stuff and experiencing my own issues and coping with my own issues, as well as the patients I was running and the people I knew that were going through the same thing, I would compare it. I would compare like the word PTSD gets thrown around a lot,
Mm-hmm.
a freaking lot.
Mm-hmm.
And something I struggled with was, well, I'm not some war veteran. I'm not even a veteran. In no way do I have PTSD. In no way is, and I don't think I do. Even today, I don't think I do. But everybody has a cup. Molly has a cup.
Mm-hmm.
Mary has a cup. You have a cup. I have a cup. And that cup gets filled no matter who you are.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody has a different trigger. So we're not so different when it boils down to it. You know what I mean?
Not at all.
And that was another thing that I really struggled with was I'm the only one. Of the hundreds of thousands of firemen and paramedics, I am the only one going through this.
Yeah. That was, for me, I think the first, probably the first year I felt that. I was like, man, I really miss all my friends. I really miss being around all these guys. And then I was like, I kind of feel alone out here. Kind of feel alone in the aspect that I can't just walk the next door over, go see my best friend and hang out with him for the night because I'm having a shitty day. I think I've heard that cup analogy a couple times, and I'm probably going to butcher this, but the cup doesn't always have to spill over, but sometimes the cup gets rattled and some spills out.
Yeah, I've never even thought of that.
Once the cup spills, the cup spills. It doesn't mean anything. The cup can always be refilled.
Yeah, it can, but it's how you clean the mess up.
Yep. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, I like that analogy.
After you asked me the other day, I texted a couple of my buddies and I was like, hey, I'm going to be on a podcast this week about mental health and separating from the military. What would you guys say your biggest struggles were? And this is a group text I've got with 3 guys I served with, and all 3 of them are probably some of my best friends I served with. I was like, I just want to get some other people's perspective so I'm a little better prepared. My buddy Hunter, who lives out in Texas, does the same thing I do. He was like, my expectations were cut pretty short. It was pretty hard to get used to not everybody following the instant obedience to order thing. And it's really hard for me to not just blow up on that, meaning them. And I also hold in a lot of anger and take it out on my loved ones, and I hate myself for that. But once the military sheen kind of wears off and your beard grows out, things start to feel pretty normal. And I was like, I definitely agree with that. And he was like, when people under my charge would fail or not meet expectations, I would take it out as a failure on my part and expect the worst from civilian companies, thinking I'd get in trouble. And that didn't help my stress. When in reality, that doesn't happen every day, and I don't really care about it. Another guy said, my struggle was that no one really gave a shit about your military service, and I felt kind of alone after having all you guys there with me all the time. So I don't know if that does anything as far as spark some topics, but...
Well, I mean, it kind of just backs up everything we were just talking about. Like, I feel like the common denominator in this conversation, in the conversation with Blake, in mine and John's conversation, it's the feeling of alone, the feeling of being the only one, the feeling of someone not understanding what you're going through and being afraid to say it or not having backup. That's just the overwhelming majority of everything I've heard. And like I said before, I think just awareness, just talking about it, making this normal makes it not so bad.
Absolutely.
I mean, obviously, like everything going on is horrible, but it makes certain situations not so bad.
Yeah. Any situation, not even talking about mental health or suicide, anything you can go through in life, whether good or bad, it's better if you can share that experience with somebody.
Misery loves company.
But dude, so does happiness.
It does.
You've told me a lot about Hunter, and I don't know the other guy, but Hunter seems like a fucking awesome leader.
He's one of the most interesting, influential people I think I've ever met.
He what you just read sums up leadership to me.
Mm-hmm.
The failure of your subordinates is a direct reflection on you.
Extreme ownership.
Dude, absolutely. And I don't work in the civilian world, but outsider looking in, I feel like a good leader is held accountable for the people he leads. Well, if they fail, it's not on them.
It isn't.
It's on that leader.
The buck stops at you
Mm-hmm.
as the leader.
But I mean, you working in the civilian world, I mean, what is your perspective on that?
Well, I mean,
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
you'll read it in every management book, every business book. The hardest part about management is managing people. And in my experience, that's the case. I'm wonderful at my job. I can push numbers all day long. I can forecast for a company all day long. When the company started growing and I started getting employees under me, that's when it got hard for me. Because not only are you expected to do your job, you're expected to have everybody else do your job. And at that point, you're delegating and you're trusting these people under you to do just as good of a job that you would do. And my stakes are low. I mean, it's not low in my world. I mean, if, a customer is unhappy, that's a big deal, especially with a small business. But like in y'all's situation, stakes are literally life and death.
Mm-hmm.
So to delegate or to manage people, the pressure to have those people perform perfectly is, I feel that pressure now. Like, I get stressed out when someone on my team, or if I drop the ball, or if someone else drops the ball, that stresses me out. If I messed up a couple documents yesterday, like I sent the wrong email like 3 times, and thank God it was to like my friend in the company, but I told him, I was like, I can't get my life together today. But that was like a huge deal for me. And to you guys, that's probably like, small beans.
Yeah, first off, I just want to say congratulations on your first mistake ever. Must be hard to have a track record like this.
Did you hear that, John?
Yeah, I heard it. I heard it.
Wait, has Molly made a mistake before?
No, never. No, just ask her. She'll tell you how she's never made any mistakes. So that's a pressure that I didn't even think about. When I think about veteran mental health and suicide, I just think of, honestly, just the flashbacks and basically what the media freaking paints PTSD to be. Mm-hmm. I didn't even think about being a leader in the military, holding your people at such a high standard and coming home and not being able to hold people at that same standard.
To demand excellence from your employees
on
a construction site.
And living in the expectation that if you're not excellent, you die, and I die. So to come home,
pedestal,
and to come home and not, like that. To not have that, dude, that would drive me freaking insane. So again, when I think of veteran PTSD, I think of the flashbacks and the shoot 'em up, bang bang stuff. I don't even think about the little things like that, man.
Well, with what Hunter said, and Hunter, if you're listening to this, I haven't even had a chance to.
Hunter, I hope you do, bro.
Hey, Hunter.
Absolutely talk at you about this, but in my perspective of what he said about the instant willingness obedience to orders, the Marine Corps does one thing phenomenally, and they haven't changed it since the beginning, and that is instant willingness obedience to orders. If somebody tells you to do something, whether it's right or wrong, if you do it immediately, one day that could potentially save your life. And whether it does or not doesn't really matter, but if it does, then I mean it's done its job. And I think coming into the civilian world, especially in the construction realm, which both of us work in, you have people here and there who are there strictly for a paycheck. And they don't care about the job. They don't care about the outcome of the job. And it is very, very, very hard not to want to resort to what he said, blowing up on them. But at the same time, I think that's what makes. I can't remember the statistics, and I don't want to try to make one up to
Because
fit the
you'll get
quote.
that asshole that.
Yeah, I get that asshole in the comments that's gonna let me know I was wrong.
We have so many YouTube comments, y'all.
Actually, we had 7 on one YouTube video.
I
So
can't
think
even
we're
count
good.
that high, but
I know. Well, you're a stupid Marine.
yeah. No, I think I can't remember what it is. There's something, and it's not just specifically Marines. There is a drastic amount of Fortune 500 CEOs that have all come from military backgrounds. And I think it's because they approach everyday life with that intensity of not this is life or death, but they understand what it means to put something at that realm. And I think when you understand how to approach something life or death, you understand how to go that extra mile. And it's not everybody, but I think that being able to do that definitely sets you apart from your peers in the civilian world. And I mean, being in a leadership position isn't always comfortable. It isn't always fun. Nor is it meant to be. But being able to learn how to address those problems without resorting to just yelling at people is a humongous I don't know the word I'm looking for. I think that sets you farther as a individual leader coming out of the military and being able to not resort to just losing your mind over small aspects like that, but being able to address the situation and be like, hey, why was this not met?
Getting your point across with using as little words as possible.
Absolutely. Simon Sinek wrote a book called Start With Why, and it is probably one of the best books I've ever read. But I think if you can start with why on a lot of these issues, that usually helps both parties understand where each other were at, and it kind of diffuses the situation so that it can actually be addressed.
I have an issue with that in my day-to-day life. Like, I mean, I talked to John about it. Like, just do it. Like, why are you questioning me? I know the big picture here. Like, just do what I said to do because I know it's best right now. But that's not always real life, and that's not really how people work. And I mean, I even know, like, I have to know the bigger picture for me to be passionate about anything. Like, I'm not going to want to do anything without knowing why I'm doing it. So, I mean, that alone, just that one statement makes sense. From a leadership role. Holy crap, we could have a whole podcast, like the three of us, about leadership.
We will.
Oh yeah, we definitely need to.
Yeah.
I think the next
we talk about
series-
that all the time.
I need to, like, before I do the podcast too, I need to get my thoughts together because I put zero thought into any of this. I was just like, yeah, I'll just roll in there. John will ask me some questions, I'll just answer it. And now I'm like, fuck, man, I don't know. My hands are sweaty. I shouldn't have worn pajama pants tonight.
No, me and Molly have actually talked about the next couple podcasts being on leadership, and I'm going to try and have Danny back on to do some leadership stuff. Him and Paul.
By the way,
I love
absolutely
that.
loved that podcast.
Dude,
It
it's
was
got
phenomenal.
the most views,
That's what happens when you get a hot shot on here.
Seriously, yeah, I know. We should have had him, like, later on.
Watch how many views this one gets, Danny.
Yeah. Suck it, Danny.
Danny don't have nothing on Josh Collett.
No.
Yeah, you just save lives. What do you think you are, John Montague?
I'm a freaking nobody, bro.
Aren't we all?
Yeah. All right, dude. Well,
You guys will hear from Josh again.
yeah, for sure. And something Molly and I said early on was, we want to share our experiences and our freaking awesome friends with all of you, but ultimately this is for us. I love doing this. It's so fun just to sit down and talk and have candid conversations.
Mary and I were talking about that tonight. She asked kind of how it got started, and we were talking about the podcast we did for my work, and she was like, what, John just liked it and decided to start doing a podcast. And I was like, yeah, kind of, but like, this is almost, we've talked about how, like, we got some good feedback on the first one and people were like, this is cool. I love hearing a couple talk about it. So, I mean, even if this reaches 10 people that really get something out of it, that's freaking cool.
Yeah.
And not to mention, it's kind of therapeutic to, like, sit here and talk about this stuff with you. I mean, honestly, with Josh and Mary, we talk about this stuff all the time. This is kind of like our Saturday night thing, but like, it's therapeutic, and I want people, I'm sure people are having, if they're not having these same conversations, number one, they need to be with someone, and number two, they may be thinking the same thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I agree. I definitely agree. It's very therapeutic.
It is.
And yeah, like Josh said, it's quality, not quantity.
Right.
If 5 people get something out of this,
If one person gets something out of this.
absolutely, dude. If one person hears this and is like, man, I need to go talk to somebody,
Absolutely.
Call us.
Yeah.
or I need to set up something where people can talk to me.
Mm-hmm.
That's a win.
Absolutely.
Well, dude, Josh, we talk about this stuff a lot, but thank you for sharing a small portion of your experience.
Yeah, I feel like I didn't really contribute a whole bunch, but
No, you did. It's been really good, and I'm glad that you're my friend.
I'm glad you're my friend. Seriously, no, I can't express that enough to either of you guys. I genuinely appreciate who y'all are. I appreciate having friends that we're able to come and talk to, and do what we're doing right now, all the time. I think, like we've said probably 10 times this podcast, that's one of the most important things.
Yeah.
And
everyone needs that.
They do. Everybody needs somebody that they can talk to uncandidly, unbiasedly, and
no judgment.
and get to the root of what they're feeling. And I don't know. I love y'all.
Yeah,
I appreciate it.
We
We
love
love
you,
you.
bro. All right. You want to close this or you want me to do it?
You go ahead. I've had wine.
All right, I'm John Montague. Big
Well,
fan of R&B and beer.
Why don't you close this, Josh?
Yeah, close this out, Josh.
All right, all of you bow your heads and pray. I'm just kidding. How do I close this out? What do I say?
Like, subscribe, follow, whatever the adjective is.
We're on all major podcast networks.
Because we're kind of a big deal now.
Yeah, for real.
But follow us. All of the exposure, everything's going to an amazing cause. Every penny made from this podcast, if we ever start making any.
Making pennies.
We've made $1.36.
Oh, nice. Yep. We've made $1.36. All $1.36 of that is going to the 575 Fools. It's all a good cause. We'll be doing more stuff like this. Also, support Next Strong. If you haven't listened to Blake's podcast, do it. It's a really, really, really great cause. We're supporting them. We're supporting 575. Duh, we love those folks. And that's it. Cheers.
Cheers, everybody. Make sure you share and subscribe. Love y'all.